Hey book girlies, I'm Sara.
I'm Bree.
And you're listening to a very special episode of A Pod of Sass and Sarcasm. So, you're not Ian.
No, I'm not.
Well, we are joined today, and by we, I mean me, because Ian's not here. If you were wondering if you were hoping he would just pop up randomly, that would be funny.
That would be terrifying because neither of us would know he was here.
That'd be great.
Oh my gosh.
I'm here for it.
That'd be fantastic.
Oh, man. Whew. So, yeah, we are joined by none other than our Disco Court favorite, Bree.
Woohoo!
So in case anyone was wondering why Ian isn't here today with us, it's not because he's passed. It's because he is out of town.
That was not what I expected.
He's not dead. I know that I am statistically the most likely person to murder him. I did not murder him. I would never. Although we do have a murder hole in the back of our house.
That's terrifying.
And we call it a murder hole because, okay, so quick side note. This house is 120-something years old. It was built in 1900. So it should actually be very easy to figure out how old it is because it is
124 years old.
124, almost 125. And its age is pretty apparent with a lot of the weird stuff about this house. One of the things, I can't tell if it's that the deck on the back was added or if they just did some weird stuff with it, some shenanigans, but underneath the deck, there's like this tiny door. And you go through that tiny door, and it looks like a little storage place. Like, when we moved in, there was like a snowblower in there, and we were like, sick, we get a free snowblower. It doesn't work, so
of course
we're like,
not. That's why it's still there.
That was why it was still there. But there was like some other stuff, and then if you go all the way to the back, there's like one of those like plastic sheets, which freaky. And then you look past that plastic sheet, and it's just a 6-foot drop.
That's terrifying. You do have a murder hole.
I don't think that the people that sold us this house knew that little door exists.
Wow.
Because of the stuff that was left in there, not just the snowblower, but like some of the other stuff. I was like, why would you give us this kind of stuff? Yeah. Like, this is like not stuff that you should leave at the house. So I don't think that they knew that that's there.
Was the snowblower like the $1 million old one, like fully all steel?
Oh, I don't know. I never saw it because Ian was like, what is the snowblower? And he tried to get it to work and it did not. And he was like, whatever was wrong with it, he was like, it is probably just as expensive to fix it as to just get a new one. Yeah. So I think he's going to try to get a new one. Yeah. But you've seen our driveway and how long it is. I need a snowblower, especially if this winter promises to be as snowy as it's supposed to be.
I hope it is.
Yeah, I hope it is too. I really like winter, but I don't like shoveling our driveway.
I do like living in a townhome for that reason. Less of a fan that my shoveler likes to come at like 2 a.m, but it's okay. They're cleaning up the driveway, so it's fine.
Yeah. Well, anyways, okay, so Ian's out of town. That was the point of that whole little tangent.
You never told him where he was. You just said he wasn't dead.
He's not dead. He's just out of town.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
It's fine. Okay. He's fine. I promise he'll be back for an episode maybe next week.
If he doesn't show back up, we'll check the murder hole.
I mean, you know where to find me. And you've got a pretty good idea of where that is.
Yeah.
So how you been? How's life?
Life's great. I mean, I get to hang out with you. I get to talk about books. I did come prepared to talk about a game since Ian is not here.
Yes.
It is not a video game. It is a game that will make you into a birder.
A what?
A birder.
A birder?
Yes. Much younger than you would hope to be into birds.
I've heard that when you reach a certain age, it sneaks up on you, because I have a coworker who turned 50 last year, and she very sudden, like, she was like, I don't know what happened, but I'm really into birding. And she downloaded the app that, like, it'll listen to birds that are out in the wild, and it'll tell you what bird they are, and she's like always on it. It's for sure. So funny.
See, I heard that it's at 30, and I'm 31, and guess what? I found this game, and now I think I'm gonna be a bird.
You already have the app. You're like, I know every bird that's in this state.
I don't have the app yet, but like maybe
you're on the way.
yeah. So it's Wingspan. We talked about it the other day, but yeah, it will make you into a bird obsessed person, which is fine if you like to wander in the woods and look for birds, I guess.
I mean, I don't like wandering in the woods, but that's where murderers are.
True. Fresh air is for dead people.
For sure. I've played Wingspan a couple times, and it's one of my absolute favorite board games, mostly because, first of all, the artwork, gorgeous.
Yes. This is why it makes you into a birder.
It does, because you're like, wow, is that what a bird actually looks like? I've never seen a bird.
And then all of a sudden you've collected a bunch that don't actually help you toward your goals, but they're really pretty.
They're great.
Yeah.
You know, they do their thing. And then they've got little bird facts on them, too, so many times. And you're like, I didn't know that about the American kestrel or whatever.
Yeah. I also like, I'll figure out what it is, but there's one that, like, bops around. He just, like...
I love that.
Headbangs as he walks around.
I also love the names of some, like, people who are responsible for naming birds.
Wild.
Unhinged.
Absolutely wild.
Absolutely unhinged.
They have spent too much time wandering in the woods.
They are very lonely. They are lost and scared.
Yes.
Because the amount of, like, blue-footed boobies and, like the great, like, American tit or something like that. Yeah. I'm like, whomst do you think you are? Just calling this a boob.
A bunch of lumberjacks that were, like, stuck in the woods for a long time.
Oh my gosh. I'm here for it, though. I think that Wingspan is really great. Do you have a favorite bird?
I do not, actually. I've only played it twice, so
okay.
I haven't gone through the whole deck yet, so it feels wrong to pick one.
Yeah. I don't think I could even name the bird that was my favorite if I tried, but I don't think I've ever won Wingspan either. I'm here for the good vibes of it. Yeah, I can't win.
I'm pretty terrible at it, I'll be honest.
And it's like, I get that there's a strategy that you can apply, but I never get lucky with, like, the resources that I'm given or whatever, so I'm just like, I also am used to other games where, like, you build things, so I keep being like, I'm gonna build a bird. No, I'm not. This isn't Build-A-Bear Workshop. It's not Build-A-Bird. I'm gonna...
Yeah.
I don't know what... You're not purchasing it either, but whatever. But I'm always like, I'm gonna build this bird. No, I'm not. No. Whatever it is.
Yeah, I think that the big key is if you can get, like, the golden eagle, you're gonna win.
I love it.
Because every time anything on the whole board eats anything, you get to eat. Because you're massive.
That's fair.
My brother got that, and he blew us all out of the water.
That's great.
Crazy. So
I think I played it at Thanksgiving last year with my family. We did this, like, very early Thanksgiving. It was all the way in October kind of thing, like, because
Halloween.
It was like a pre-Halloween Thanksgiving, and it was because it was with my dad's family, and my dad's family is huge, and we never get with each other. Yeah. And so they were like, Thanksgiving is a stressful holiday for everyone. We're going to take the stress off of your plates by not making you come to see us for the actual Thanksgiving, but we also want to give thanks for our family. All cute, mushy stuff. And so I brought that to our really early Thanksgiving, and we were playing it, and I did not know that you could score as high as some of the people that were. I was like, oh.
Some people have been training for that Thanksgiving.
And they didn't, like, we had introduced the game to them.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And they blew me out of the water. I always have one of the lowest scores. Oh, again, I'm just here for the vibes. That's all I'm here for.
And the pretty artwork.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well.
Away from pretty birds to another type of bird. Another type of bird, really.
I was just going to say, I mean, the book that we are reading, technically, I don't know if it's actually about a bird or if it's a metaphor, but I'm assuming it's a metaphor. But we are going to be reading The Nightingale by Kristin Hannah. And this book was recommended to me several months ago now. Mm-hmm. It's been a while. By none other than Brie.
Wahoo!
And
it's the wrong sound for this book.
Yeah, no, this is for anyone who knows anything about this book, it is
not a wahoo.
Not a wahoo. But I tried to pick it up a while ago. I was telling you about this earlier, where I tried to listen to it, but I couldn't totally pay attention to it when I was listening to it on audiobook. And I felt like I was not in the right headspace. But, like, to be fair, it's a book about World War II. So it is, I don't know who's in the right headspace ever for it. It is, you know, it's heavy, it's dark, it's sad. It's going to be about World War II. There's no getting around it. So I don't know. I was not ready for it a few months ago when I tried listening to it. But now I'm committed because Ian drew it out of my to be read jar, and I'm trying to commit to whatever is drawn out of that, which I'm like really scared about because there are some real gnarly ones in that. But
at least it's a sparkly jar.
It is sparkly. It's very cute. So yeah. So this is going to be a little bit weird too because you obviously recommended this book to me. Mm-hmm. And so you already know about this. So this is going to be maybe a little bit weird because you might be sitting here being like, Sarah, I know that happened. I get it because it's okay. It's fine. It'll be great. Let's get into it. Let's start with the banger of an opening line, which is, if I have learned anything in this long life of mine, it is this. In love, we find out who we want to be. In war, we find out who we are.
Ooh.
What? Kristin Hannah. I've never read a Kristin Hannah book before, but I have seen so much of her on all the social media pages, and it again tends to make me very nervous when a book is popular. Not that there's anything wrong with popular literature. I generally love popular literature, but there are some things where I'm like, if everybody's talking about it, I don't know how good it actually is, because sometimes what is popular is not the same stuff that I like. Yep, so that's usually this. So I was nervous about this one when you're like, you should really, I'm like, because I've seen a lot about it. I don't know. But that opening line just chills.
Yeah.
It's true. It's so true. It's such a true statement. So this book starts out with an old woman in 1995 on the Oregon coast cleaning out her attic. Or more accurately, she is specifically looking for a trunk in her attic that has a bunch of stuff in it, like photographs, knickknacks, other things like that. We don't really get to know what's everything that's in the trunk, because she wants to take this trunk with her when she moves, because apparently she's dying. It sounds like dementia. I'm not entirely
so.
Okay. And maybe, I don't know if it's ever explained. So she's apparently dying, and her son wants to move her into some kind of care facility. And during this chapter, she's talking about her son's becoming very controlling of her, and she kind of is allowing it to happen, and she's like, maybe if I did things differently, he would respect me and all this kind of stuff. But she's like, I will not let him control me on this one thing. I am taking this goddamn trunk with me. Like, it's gonna happen. That trunk is gonna go with her. All this, not just some of the knickknacks. She's like, I am taking everything.
Apparently this is like a large trunk.
It seems huge. It's like one of those like steamer trunks is what it sounds like. During this time, she also starts talking about her grief and how she's using, like, what she is doing to cope with her, like, copious amounts of grief, it sounds like, because she mentioned, like, you know, her memories from the war, and she's been thinking about the past. So there's this little passage that I was like, ooh, chills again. Lately, though, I find myself thinking about the war and my past, about the people I lost. It makes it sound as if I misplaced my loved ones. Perhaps I left them where they don't belong and then turned away, too confused to retrace my steps. They are not lost, nor are they in a better place. They are gone. As I approach the end of my years, I know that grief, like regret, settles into our DNA and remains forever a part of us. The past has a clarity I can no longer see in the present. Oh, I love that, like, personification of grief as just like this thing that takes a hold of your whole life.
And it's so beautiful. Like, both my grandfathers were World War II vets.
Mm-hmm.
This illustrates both sides of their experience. Like, one, it sounds weird to say, had like a really good experience in war. Like, he just hung out on a base, fixed a couple planes, and like played in the band.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one, we later found out, like, we knew he lost his leg, but like that he had the Silver Star of Valor and like a whole bunch of terrible stuff, and he was only over there for like a month, and all this happened in that month, and it really stuck with both of them in a way that fits how she's described this grief, because they both had pieces of grief in different ways that affected them. So yeah, it's just kind of interesting.
Well, and especially just like how she talks about, you know, because this is language that I think we all use when talking about grief in some ways, of like, we feel like things are lost, because they're gone. But I love how she's distinguishing between, like, it's not like I misplaced these people.
I know where they are.
They're dead. They are not here. They are gone. They're not in some better place. They're not, whatever. And so first of all, I love the playfulness of the way that came out. In my opinion, the way that I envision that being said, I'm like, it sounds like I misplaced them. That's so funny. And then she's like, no, I didn't misplace them. They're gone. And I'm like, oh, now we're serious again. So I love that playfulness that she has in here. And whoever this woman is, because we don't find out her name, at least not in this chapter. I haven't read all the way through. I'm assuming we figure out who she is, but she seems sassy, and I'm about her.
And I love too, like what you said with the playfulness, is that it's the playfulness that comes from like somebody's familiarity with grief.
Mm-hmm.
That like they're so familiar with it, and it sat with them for so long that they can be funny about it.
Right.
And so like that's such a great way of putting it. That it's like a humor around grief.
Yeah.
And it's. Cool.
I love it, and I think talking about how she has that familiarity with grief. It's very true, because she's saying, like, it'll settle in you, into your DNA. It becomes a part of who you are. And I think, especially with World War II, there isn't, hopefully, anything else that's like the grief of World War II, because, my God.
Well, it's settled into everyone's DNA, even into future generations, too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So this first chapter was told from this old woman's perspective. Again, we don't know what her name is. She's obviously not going to be saying her name. That doesn't, you don't go around talking about yourself in third person. I mean, most people don't. I don't, not usually. And her son obviously just calls her mom in the scene. So, we don't get to know who she is, which, again, I think that's probably a mystery that's going to unravel as we go. I already think I have an idea of who it might be. Okay. So you're going to not tell me, you're going to cover your face and not see if we know. But I'm not there yet.
Oh, okay.
I'll tell you my predictions.
I cannot keep a secret. So, my face literally just shows all my emotions at all times.
It's totally fine. I appreciate your dedication to not trying to spoil it for me. So while she's digging up this trunk, she opens it and she finds an old photograph with the name Juliet Gervais scrawled on the back. And it's a name that she hasn't heard in years. And the way that she phrases it confuses me, because I'm like, either her name is Juliet Gervais and then she's now assuming a different identity, or it's the name of a friend that she lost. And so those are the two things that I kind of come up with. Maybe there's another explanation for that name. I'm very curious who Juliet Gervais is, though, just because she finds this photograph. She says, I've not heard that name in a long time. And then her son comes into the room and ruins it. And I'm like, I want to know about that. I want to know who the hell Juliet Gervais is. But I want to know who this old woman is. I have an idea of who she is. And first of all, I think she's hilarious. I think she's got a little bit of sass and pizzazz to her. And obviously the next chapter starts talking about somebody else, I'm assuming. And so my brain wants to make the connection that immediately the following chapter is about the same old woman, because it's a flashback. Because again, this scene is in 1995 and then the next chapter goes back to 1939. And so I'm like, well, logically, it could be the same person, and this was her when she was younger. But I'm like, I don't know if I feel like Kristin Hannah is I'm going to play a game with you guys. We're going to figure out who's who and what's going on. So I personally think that this old lady is kind of hilarious, but also has obviously a lot of very deep and heavy feelings about things. I don't know. I'm curious, but I'm more intrigued about who Juliet Gervais is and where that's going to come in. So, like I said, then we cut to a small town in France, a few hours outside of Paris in 1939. And this chapter, first of all, switches from first person to third person. So the first chapter was in first person. This one now goes into third person. And it's focusing on a woman named Vienne, who I'm guessing is in her late 20s, probably
Sounds like it.
Yeah. Her husband, Antoine, and their daughter, Sophie, and the three of them go on a picnic near the river. That's what this chapter is about. And again, at first, because of the previous chapter, I assumed Vienne is the old lady. But then as, the chapter went on, I'm like, I don't know. She doesn't have that, humor about her. So this is why I'm like, she might be. The war might have changed her into a humorous old lady. I don't know. But we'll see, I guess. So I assumed maybe that was her, but I'm not so sure now. And again, like I said, I'm way more curious about the other woman in the photograph than I am about who the actual lady is. So Vienne and Antoine were childhood sweethearts ever since her father abandoned her and her sister Isabel in this small town after he returned from World War I. And there is this one line that I have to read it because it's so heartbreaking the way that she wrote this. It had happened so fast. Vienne hadn't really understood. Papa dropped off his daughters like soiled laundry and left them with a stranger. God, that just breaks my heart.
The heaviness just settles onto you.
Yes.
Like, you can just feel their confusion.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Vienne and Isabel handled this confusion very differently, we find out. For Vienne, she met Antoine. They fell in love. They got married. They had a kid named Sophie after several miscarriages, which is also very sad. So while they're on this picnic by the river, Antoine tries to bring up the fact that he's being summoned to the war efforts. And Vienne doesn't want to talk about it. She doesn't really even want to acknowledge it. Like, she, ignores any kind of conversation about it and pretends that it's not happening. The day passed in a haze of sunshine-warmed contentment. They talked and laughed and shared their picnic. It wasn't until late in the day, when Sophie was off with her fishing pole and Antoine was making their daughter a crown of daisies, that he said, "Hitler will suck us all into his war soon." War. It was all anyone could talk about these days. And Vienne didn't want to hear it, especially not on this lovely summer day. She got to her feet and clapped her hands. "Come on, Sophie. It's time to go home. You can't ignore this, Vienne. Should I look for trouble? Why? You are here to protect us." So later that evening, Vienne finally has that conversation that she's been avoiding with Antoine. Vienne went down to the stairs and headed for the backyard. Outside, the night was sultry. The air smelled of jasmine. She found Antoine sitting in one of the iron cafe chairs out on the grass. His legs stretched out, his body slumped uncomfortably to one side. She came up beside him, put a hand on his shoulder. He exhaled smoke and took another long drag on the cigarette. Then he looked up at her. In the moonlight, his face appeared pale and shadowed, almost unfamiliar. He reached into the pocket of his vest and pulled out a piece of paper. "I have been mobilized, Vienne, along with most men between 18 and 35. "Mobilized? But we are not at war. I am to report for duty on Tuesday." But you're a postman." He held her gaze, and suddenly she couldn't breathe. "I am a soldier now, it seems."
I love this excerpt that you picked for a couple reasons. One, I love the, trying to figure out where you are in the book. I love how she plays with imagery to show, with the shadows and the paleness settling onto him, the gravitas of the situation, and also just kind of this dichotomy of the warmth and the sunshine and this cold paleness. Also, to add some levity to it, why is uncomfortably slouched to one side the only way you can ever sit in those stupid chairs? They're so uncomfortable. I don't know why they're so popular. They're cute. They're real cute.
They're so cute.
But she's right.
Yeah.
That is the only way to sit in a chair like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree with everything you're saying, including the chairs. But yeah, I liked this. I wasn't sure how much of this I wanted to pick in here because when I was doing this, I was like, do I include that part about the shadows or not? But I'm like, it was such good writing right there. And it really makes the scene stick out in my head. And I could tell immediately that it's there's the paleness and the shadows, and it shows that kind of dichotomy, and it shows kind of the choices that many people had to make during the war. And especially too, because later in this chapter, she talks about her own, or it might be the next chapter, she talks about her dad's experience with World War I. It really shows that there's no room for middle ground in war. It's always a choice, and every choice has very defined consequences. So it's gonna be heavy, folks. If you thought the last book was heavy, I don't think we've seen anything yet. This is gonna be a really, really hard one to get through.
Sorry.
It
is.
It's okay. I'm going to blame Ian for this one because, first of all, he's not here. And second of all, he's not lost. He's not gone. He's just not here. He'll be back. But he's the one who picked it out of the jar. So
we can blame him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just because you were the one that made me put it in the jar. That's not the point. Yeah, because also, like, a lot of the books that are on my shelf right behind you are also very terribly sad books.
Right. Holy cow.
So some of the books that are in my to be read jar are books that I've started but like never finished kind of thing. Because like some of them were for classes that I had to take in college and stuff. But I know for a fact that this one is really sad. And I never finished it because my professor had made a mistake on the syllabus and had like skipped a week. And so we had to do like 2 weeks of reading in a week. And I was like, that's half of the book basically. And I was like, I can't do that. I'm sorry. I just cannot do that much reading in that amount of time. So then we were having like this class discussion and she's like, yeah, and then this thing happened. And all of us were like, wait, what? And she was like, yeah, didn't any of you read that? And like one student finally was brave enough and was like, I'm sorry, I couldn't do that much reading in a week. And she was like, wait, what? And like we pointed to the syllabus and we're like, yeah, is like, that's like, you're expecting us to have like half of this really long book that's really dense with a lot of stuff that we don't know about. And she was like, I don't know why I did that. That's a really strange way to like run this. And then I was like, is that where the missing week went? And she's like, oh my God, you're right. And I was like, okay. So I never finished it though. And so I know something crazy happens in it. And I am shocked by what she had said, but I never got there because then after that I was like, okay, I got to read the next book. And then I just haven't had time to like go back to it. So I'm like, so that is in there as well. And I'm terrified. So there's some heavy hitters in my to be read list.
I feel like we should throw like a Winnie the Pooh book in there, like just to lighten it up a little.
I know, because you keep telling me about all of these like what do you call them? The fluffy ones. They're
like basically like a Hershey's chocolate bar where like you're always happy it's chocolate, but you always wish it was better chocolate. Like,
palate cleansers. That's what you tend to call them. You're like, oh, if you want a good palate cleanser, try this. And I'm like, sure. And then I never put it on my to be read list, but I really, really should because this is, and then some of them are like, I just thought the title sounded intriguing. So like, it is a mixed bag in there already, but I don't think there's many palate cleansers in there because most of my books are not.
No.
Not the fluffies.
That's all right.
All right, sorry, we got sidetracked. I am very, very distractible right now.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's my own fault. So for the next few days, before Antoine leaves, Vienne tries to basically imprint this memory of pre-war Antoine into herself. So she's trying to spend as much time with him as she can. She also tries to basically manifest his return by Christmas. Mm-hmm. She's like, you'll be back by the end of the year and you're going to be fine and everything's going to be fine. And that's just going to be how it's going to be, right?
And at this point in time, she believes that the war actually legitimately will be over by Christmas.
Mm-hmm. But then at the same time, there's like this deep down unsettling feeling that she has that he's maybe not going to return for a while. Mm-hmm. Even if the war is done by Christmas, he's not going to return for a while, if at all. And also, she is worried that if he does return, that he's not going to return as the same person. Because, again, she starts comparing this situation to her father, who, again, abandoned her and her sister at, like, a foster home. It didn't sound like an orphanage.
A school.
Okay.
It's a school that is at a abbey, I believe. So it's kind of an orphanage.
Okay, kind of. It didn't sound like an orphanage, but I also, like, read through that part really fast, so I wasn't totally aware. But she was worried that he was going to return, that Antoine would return like her father did after World War I, who he returned as a completely different man. And then after their mom died, that's when he decided to drop off his children at basically an orphanage. And the thing was, she kept saying that she wanted him to love her, and she tried her best to love him. But he, again, was just a very different person, and it was really hard psychologically on everyone, but especially on him, because, first of all, World War I was no joke. PTSD is insane.
Especially when no one knows what it is.
Exactly.
Everyone thinks you're just insane because you have it. Yeah.
Yes. So I understand where he was coming from and like trying to be like, I can't imagine going through World War I and then having to go back and pretend that everything's normal and fine. Like, no. So I get where her father's coming from, but I also get where she's coming from of being like, he's not my dad.
Well, especially since, like, from everything she says, he was a incredible dad before the war. Like, loving to his wife and kids and like, fun to be around and all that.
Yeah. So. To then just turn around and abandon your children, it seems, and without any explanation. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. So there was just this one line I had to put it in here because, again, it gave me chills. The father who went off to war was not the one who came home. And specifically when she says that line, she wasn't saying specifically her father. It's just the father who goes off to war. So any father who goes off to war
is not the same one that comes back.
Which is why she's worried for Anton or Antoine. I don't know why I keep calling him Anton.
And for is it Sophie or Sophia?
I think it's Sophie.
I think it's Sophie. Yeah.
So eventually Antoine does leave, and Vianne does basically everything that she can to not fall apart, recognizing that she needs to be there for her daughter Sophie. So then we cut to 1940 in another small French town outside of Paris, and we are getting to see Isabelle, who is Vianne's younger sister. And at this point, she's 19 years old, and she's in finishing school, which is one of those places that was designed to teach women etiquette.
Yep.
And things like that, like how to set a place at the table, and how to use your cutlery properly, and how to throw parties, and how to basically be a homemaker. That's basically where she's at. And apparently, first of all, I need to admit right now, I love Isabelle. She's great, at least so far. I hope she stays great because I get that war changes people.
I think you will continue to enjoy her.
Okay, good, because she gives me life. I love her so much. So she has been unruly, and according to Vianne, she was also very unruly. Vianne was saying that Isabelle would like just not listen to the rules and would just go against what she was told for the sake of it. And then now we're seeing from Isabelle's perspective, she wasn't just throwing tantrums for the sake of it. She's kind of like me in that I can't follow rules if I don't know why they're there. And she is so much, she's like, why do I have to cut this stupid orange with a knife and fork?
Okay, that is a dumb way to get an orange.
It's so, she's like, and then like, she goes into basically like the headmaster's office and is like, the headmaster's like, why are you here? And she's like, it's because I couldn't cut the orange. And like, honestly, here's the thing. I don't even like oranges, but if I was gonna eat one, I would do the American thing and I would peel it. And I'm like with my hands. Yeah. I'm like, I love you so much. That is not the question that she was asking. The question that the headmistress, whatever, was asking was, why are you at this school? Because you suck at all of this. You are so bad at it. And apparently she's been kicked out of many of these schools. Like,
what I can't figure out is who's paying for this?
Just like, oh my god,
they can't be free.
No,
I don't know.
I do not know much about finishing schools because I've never been to one. Thankfully, oh my god. I know, with all of my burping that I will edit out, yeah, I don't think it's much of a surprise that I've not been to a finishing school. So, again, she's not trying to be unreasonable, but she really doesn't understand why etiquette matters, because, like, in her worldview, it doesn't. It doesn't really, like, you can be, I mean, she wants people to be polite and everything, and she is very polite, but she's, first of all, kind of clumsy, and she doesn't agree with just following rules for the sake of it, which I think is obviously a very important mindset to have going into World War II, because she's like, I'm not going to be one of those people that just believes any kind of propaganda.
Yep.
And I love her so much. She's just great. Based on her sassy vibes alone, I am starting to believe that Isabelle is the older woman from chapter 1, because the old lady's being like, it sounds like I misplaced some of my friends. It's the same vibe as, like, why the fuck do I need to cut an orange with a knife and fork when I could just use my goddamn hands? Like, it gives the same energy. So if it's not Isabel, like...
You don't have any idea.
I can't think of... But again, I don't know how many more characters we're going to be. I don't know how many characters are in this book.
Yeah.
But if I've already met who that old lady is from the characters that we've seen so far, I am banking it on Isabel. It has to be her. If it's not her, I can't. I mean, here's the thing. We've technically met Sophie, but she's like 8, and she's... Yeah.
Also, that'd be really early onset dementia.
Yeah.
In 1995 for an 8-year-old in...
Don't ask me to do math right now.
Yeah, we just had a whole conversation about how both of us are in math type roles in our regular jobs and can't do math.
Yeah, it's true.
So
yeah. Anyways, so she's been expelled from these finishing schools, and in this meeting that she has with the headmistress about peeling oranges, she is let go from this one as well. So they're informing her that they're going to be sending her back to live with her father in Paris, and she's disappointed, but she's more so upset because she feels that her father views her as a burden, and that's why he abandoned her in Vienne. And so she's like, I don't want to be treated like I'm a burden. I just don't understand why I'm in finishing school. Why I've been in all of these finishing schools. What is the point of them? And I'm like, yeah, I agree, girl. Like, woo. So her dad picks her up from the train station, and he immediately is like, you got kicked out of another one. And he's lamenting about he doesn't think he's going to be able to find another one that she can go to. And she's like, cool.
See, now I'm just imagining, like, this forum where all the finishing schools are like, don't accept Isabel. She's nuts. They're, like, sending carrier pigeons with, like, I suppose telegrams also.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
No, I like carrier pigeons. It's way more their style, I feel like. It's more polite.
Yes.
Oh, my gosh. So... he's like, I don't know if we're going to be able to find another one. And she's like, cool, can I, like, stay with you, though? And, like, I'll work at the bookstore that you own while we look for another one. That's fine. And he was like, all right, fine. So then sometime later, I'm not really sure when, it's one day she's just having a lazy morning with her friend Christoph. I'm assuming friend. Friend is a strong word, I feel like. Who is a college student at a nearby university. And they're, like, laying in a field. I think they're having a picnic. Oh, they are, because, like, later they mentioned, like, a picnic basket. I'm like, yes. And I'm here for all of these French picnics that are being talked about, because Vienne and Antoine had their little picnic. And I'm like, oh, that sounds so cute. And now Isabel and Christoph are having this picnic, and she's, reading a book, and she's listening to the bees, and she's just having a vibe of a time. She's having a great time. And Christoph, I also imagine, is very bored with this picnic, because okay, I also understand. You go on a picnic, you're thinking you're going to have a fun conversation, and then she pops out a book and is like, not engaging in conversation at all, which, to be fair, I don't blame Isabel for not engaging in conversation with Christoph, because...
I'm sure Christoph was hoping for a conversation.
Yes. If you couldn't tell. I'm not the biggest fan of Christoph, which is... It's fine. Everything's fine. So I think he's bored out of his mind, though. I hope he's bored out of his mind, because he deserves it at this point. You read too much, Christoph said, chewing a stalk of hay. What is that? A romantic novel? She rolled toward him, snapping the book shut. It was about Edith Cavell, a nurse in the Great War. A hero. Do you also like all my typos that you are seeing?
Yeah,
yes.
Fantastic. You're right, you can't read.
I can't read, I can't write, I can't do anything. I know what I meant, so we're good.
Works. I'm more impressed by the fact that you can just blow past them. Cool.
It's great. Everything's fine. Normally, I am reading off of my iPad, because, again, I'm usually sitting all the way over there. Man, I hope that I'm not, like, blowing out the speakers when I'm listening to this later, but it's fine. But yeah, for all of you who can't see my notes, I wrote a her instead of hero.
I mean, she is also a herb.
I mean, if the name Edith Cavell didn't give that away, but you know. Yeah. Let me read that one again. She rolled toward him, snapping the book shut. It was about Edith Cavell, a nurse in the Great War, a hero. I could be a war hero, Christoph. He laughed. A girl? A hero? Absurd. So I don't know if you have seen a Harry Potter musical.
Parts of it.
Okay, so it's a satirical retelling of the Harry Potter stories, and there's this one scene between Snape and Lupin in there where they just go, "That's absurd. You're absurd. Oh, how absurd." And like they just can't stop saying the word absurd, and the way that they say the word absurd cracks me up. And so every time I see the word or hear the word absurd, I just go, "That's absurd." So
this explains so much.
It's going on in my head at all times. That's absurd. So I get that this is a serious book, and it's a very heavy topic, but damn, that was some nice levity in my own brain as far as he goes.
This is how we're dealing with the heaviness of the book. So.
Yes. Him just being like, a girl? A hero? That's absurd. And that's literally how I read it. I was like, that's how it goes. So that's all I heard when I read this line. That's absurd. And also, he is sexist as hell right there. I was like, yeah. I do not like you after that.
I also appreciate that this French man has an English accent.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, maybe. Probably. Probably. That's probably the type of English you learned.
No, I think he's French, but I can't do a French accent.
It's okay.
At all. And
I'm enjoying it. It's fine.
I'm not going to offend any French listeners that I know right now I don't have. Did you know that I do have a listener in Canada?
They might speak French.
They might.
Listener in Canada.
Do you speak French? And are you still listening to me? Because I don't know that for sure, but I was looking at my analytics, and it said that there's somebody in Canada and 2 people in Russia.
All right. Cool.
So let's go.
All right.
Anyways, okay. So again, we're going back to the conversation where she was saying that she could be a war hero. And he laughed. A girl? A hero? That's absurd. Isabel got to her feet quickly, yanking up her hat and white gloves. Don't be mad, he said, grinning up at her. I'm just tired of war talk. And it's a fact that women are useless in war. Your job is to wait for our return.
Now I'm just imagining her, sitting there, slapping this hat on her knee, waiting for someone to walk back in the door. For, years. Anyway, sorry,
oh my
continue.
God, that's so great.
Yeah.
Your job is just to wait for our return. Okay, right, Kristoff. He propped his cheek in one hand and peered up at her through the mop of blonde hair that fell across his eyes. In his yachting-style blazer and wide-legged pants, he looked exactly like what he was. A privileged university student who was unused to work of any kind. Many students his age had volunteered to leave university and join the army. Not Kristoff. Isabel hiked up the hill and through the orchard, out to the grassy knoll where his open-top Panhard was parked. I don't know if that's how you say it.
Sure, I don't know. I'm not a car person.
It's a car, apparently, and an open-topped one, a nice convertible.
Would assume it's expensive.
Probably. She was already behind the wheel, with the engine running, when Kristoff appeared, a sheen of sweat on his conventionally handsome face, the empty picnic basket hanging from his arm. You're not driving, he said. It appears that I am. Now get in. It's my automobile, Isabel. Well, to be precise, and I know how important the facts are to you, Kristoff, it's your mother's automobile. And I believe that a woman should drive a woman's automobile. I am obsessed with Isabel.
Yes, absolutely.
That just...
She's just so nice and sassy.
So sassy and so, subtle about it, too, as far as, he already knows that she's mad, because, he's like, a woman can't be a hero, and they're useless and whatever, and she just stands up and is like, okay, I'm gonna leave. And he's like, don't be mad, and she's like, I'm not even gonna engage with you, I'm just gonna walk up this hill, and she just, strolls up that hill, no problem. He's, running after her. I'm just imagining him, out of breath, because, it's, talking about how, he's, sweating and whatever, and I'm just imagining him looking, slightly disheveled, out of breath, being
grass stains on his white pants.
Yes, and just being like... And then, looking up finally and being like, you're not driving? And she's like, yes, I fucking am. Get the fuck in the car. And he's like, it's my car. And she's like, oh my God. No, it's not. Get in the back if you want.
It's the same energy of my dad at the auto mechanic a couple weeks ago.
Oh my God.
So the mechanic came out and he's like, oh, this is how the sensor works that we replaced it's not important, whatever. I'm like, oh, that's actually like a pretty clever censor. And he all but rolled his eyes at me. And my dad goes, well, actually, she's the electrical engineer and she actually knows what you're talking about. The man's face went white. I was like, thank you, Dad. You're great.
That's awesome. Yes. Oh,
same energy.
love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So what I find really interesting about these two scenes that we see, so we see Vienne being very upset about the idea of Antoine leaving. And then we hear, and like, throughout that whole time, she's like, I don't want to talk about the war. It's not here. It's like she's pretending it's not a thing. But then we also hear, not necessarily from his perspective, but we do hear about Christoph not wanting to talk about the war. Mm-hmm. And so it's these two totally different perspectives. I mean, like, they're the same idea, but from very different viewpoints of it. Because Vienne doesn't want to talk about the war because she's afraid of it. And mm-hmm. she's afraid that it's going to rip her family apart. She's, at the very least, afraid that it's going to change her husband into a completely different person. Christoph doesn't want to talk about the war because it's inconsequential to him. It doesn't matter because it's boring.
It's inconvenient.
Oh my gosh, that's such a great way that he definitely thinks of it. Because unlike Antoine, he apparently has a choice about whether or not to be drawn into the war or not, because all of his friends and all of the people at his university volunteered, mm-hmm. versus Antoine was summoned,
was conscripted.
Yeah. So that difference there of him like having the choice and choosing the wrong thing, mm-hmm. of being like, I'm not gonna fight in the war because I'm too good for it.
I like my picnics.
Yeah. So I hope he's embarrassed by his choice, quite honestly, but because he has a choice and other people don't, him not wanting to talk about the war is, again, very selfish, very privileged, very just like, ugh. So I loved having that juxtaposition of having Vienne's perspective, not wanting to talk about it, and then having Isabel hearing somebody else not wanting to talk about it for a very different reason. I just thought that was a very well set up. So Isabel drives back to her dad's bookshop where he scolds her for being late because, again, she said she would work there. And she tries to ignore his scolding. It's like, I'm just going to get to work. Nobody's here, so it's not a big deal. And to me, I'm like, the job must be really boring because apparently she falls asleep in the middle of
books where people randomly fall asleep.
You know what? I don't want to draw parallels between, but so far there's a couple of weird parallels between this book and the last one that I just read.
Sorry.
No, it's randomly falling asleep like they've never fallen asleep before. It's weird because it does say that, like, where she, like, they're having this conversation and then suddenly her dad says, did you hear that? And then, like, the next line is, did she fall asleep? Like, what time? And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Okay. So it was kind of odd. So it must be pretty boring because she apparently fell asleep and she awakens when her dad asks if she, quote unquote, heard that. Isabel sat up. She hadn't heard her father approach, but he was beside her now, frowning. There was a strange sound in the bookshop, to be sure. Dust fell from the ceiling. The bookcases clattered slightly, making a sound like chattering teeth. Shadows passed in front of the leaded glass display windows at the entrance. Hundreds of them. People. So many of them. Papa went to the door. Isabel slid off her stool and followed him. As he opened the door, she saw a crowd running down the street, filling the sidewalks. What in the world? Papa muttered. Isabel pushed past Papa, elbowed her way into the crowd. A man bumped into her so hard she stumbled, and didn't even apologize. More people rushed past them. What is it? What's happened? She asked a florid, wheezing man who was trying to break free of the crowd. The Germans are coming into Paris, he said. We must leave. I was in the Great War, I know. Isabel scoffed. Germans in Paris? Impossible. We must get home, Papa said, locking the bookshop door. It can't be true, she said. The worst can always be true, he said grimly.
Yeah.
It's so good. I love that writing. I love how terrifying that, like, you know, okay, so you see people running, you don't know what the hell's happening. You're like, what's going on? And then that moment of disbelief when he's like, the Germans are coming into Paris. Like, that just struck terror in my heart. And then her being in that moment of disbelief of, that's impossible. Why?
Yeah.
No, they're not coming into Paris. Oh, it's so scary. Like, and it's such a, like, visceral fear.
And I think one of the, like, weird things about World War II that's so, like you said, such a visceral fear to us now is, like, none of us can imagine something of this magnitude happening.
Mm-hmm.
Or an army of that magnitude marching toward a city such as Paris,
Mm-hmm.
and no one knowing about it.
Right.
Like, because we live in an era where you wouldn't know, like, we would know.
Yeah.
Everyone would know that it was coming. And so I think that's, like, something from our generation that's weird about World War II.
Yeah.
Is, like...
How did they not know?
How did they not know? But it's obvious, like, they clearly didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
crazy.
It's that element of surprise and, like, you know, there was talk of that kind of thing happening, but you're like, no, that can't happen, and, you know, whatever. And it's just that kind of, like, gut punch of, like, you so deeply believed that you were safe, and that it's that, like, feeling of, you go through that thought of, like, wow, this is a horrible, like, thing, but that would never happen to me. It's one of those things where, like, I totally understand that feeling of, like, oh, that could never happen to me, but then it does. I have read a little bit further in this, but I don't have notes about it. And basically, from what I remember, and I do have my book in front of me, I could just, like, open it, but I'm not gonna. But Isabel and her dad go home and basically try to survive an air raid. But it sounds like, yeah, they experience an air raid, and then the chapter ended, and I was like, what? Like, so it's
kind of a cool place to end a chapter.
It's horrible. But I think there is some purpose with that, as far as, like, this war in a lot of ways came on seemingly out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. And granted, there were a lot of signs that it was coming and all this kind of stuff, but for a lot of people, they were under that impression of, this couldn't happen to us. This isn't actually happening. And then, oh wait, yeah, it is. And so it's that very sudden, like, oh my God, now there's air raids, and oh my God, now there's, you know, like, there's people running in the streets, and it's big cities being attacked, and it's, you know, it is happening, and it's happening now. Mm-hmm. And that is a very scary thought. I think that reading books about World War II especially are important, because there, like, again, we were saying, there were signs that this war was coming. And either people didn't pay attention to them or didn't believe them. And it's one of those things where, like, I really don't want to believe that something like World War II could happen again. But I feel like if we don't educate ourselves about it, if we don't read books about it, if we don't learn the history of it and learn what those signs actually were that people misunderstood or dismissed or whatever it was, history is bound to repeat itself.
I agree that I think it's really important to remember history so that it doesn't repeat.
Yeah. I am excited is not the right word, but I am intrigued to read more. Mm-hmm. I am scared because while I am a very big fan of historical fiction, it is one of my favorite genres. It's always intense, and it's always there is no such thing as, like, a happy I've yet to read a happy historical fiction of anything.
I will tell you, this one ends up more not happy, because like you said, none of them really end up happy. More satisfyingly than any other one I've read. Okay. And less fully depressing. Okay.
It's not like you feel, like, super hopeless by the end of it.
You will bawl. Okay. But you don't feel hopeless.
Good. So, yeah. A few years ago, my sister was studying abroad in Poland, and I went to visit her for, like, New Year's. And she was in Warsaw for her studies, and we took a trip to Krakow and Auschwitz. Yeah. And, I mean, that was real. I mean, that was a big day. Like, it was very heavy and sad. And they have that book of, I think they call it the Book of Life, of, like, how many lives went through there. And we have an ancestor who's in that book, and we're like, that's... Ancestor sounds so ancient, though. I mean, like, it would be like a great-grandparent, I think, is who it would end up being. So we, you know, we have, pretty close ties to World War II. And I personally feel like I don't actually know that much about World War II.
Yeah.
Like, I do feel like I learned a lot about it in high school. But there's still things about it that surprise me because, like, one of the things I learned more about it when I was in college from my English classes more than anything because, and here, this, again, I'm going to highlight my ignorance because I'm kind of embarrassed that I didn't know this. I did not realize how big of a role Italy played in World War II.
I didn't either until I read, like, this book.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was one other one I read or listened to recently. I'll tell you about it some other time. But also, like, until I read this book, I didn't realize how very little I knew about France. I had no idea about how it was structured, how, like, one half was free and one wasn't.
Right.
Like, free, quote unquote.
Right.
And one wasn't, and all the, like, I didn't know any of that.
And that, okay, thank you, because I knew that France was, like, a relatively big, but, like, from what I remember learning in high school, I'm like, they talk about Germany, they talk about the Soviet Union, they talk about, like, the UK, they talk about China and Japan, and the United States. Like,
that's it.
And then they say that France and Italy were, like, big players, because I remember, like, Googling, I had to Google it today, because I was like, did Italy actually play that big of a role in whatever? And when you, like, are like, who are the big players in World War II? France and Italy are always mentioned, but I'm like, I don't remember learning about that. It wasn't until I was in college and we were reading a book called Black Mamba Boy by, it was like Nafida Muhammad. And wonderful story, but it also takes place during like the 1930s, 40s type time, so during World War II.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that Italy invaded Ethiopia during that time.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that they did so many, like, atrocious things.
Yeah, it was horrible.
And it's one of those things where it's like, I think that it is important to read books that are about World War II because that is where I've learned way more stuff.
Well, yeah, like, I've talked about the Seven Sisters series. So there's one called The Storm Sister where, spoiler alert, the girl is turns out she's from Norway. You find out super early in the book, so like it's not a spoiler.
Okay.
If you know how the series goes, you know she's from Norway, and I didn't know that Nazis made it all the way into Oslo. I knew they'd gone like somewhat into Scandinavia, but I didn't realize like just how far-reaching north they got too.
Yeah.
Again, we aren't taught about that.
Yeah.
And all we're really taught about France is D-Day, and that's about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's important for everyone to learn about World War II and to read about it and to, like, comparing it to current political climate, like, horrible propaganda stuff. There's a lot of places that are, like, currently in the middle of, like, civil wars that have the same kind of, like, rhetoric that is being spewed as what you hear from Nazi Germany. And I'm like, that is horrifying.
I think the biggest thing is not alienating people who believe things differently from you. Because there was something, a friend that I don't really know much anymore said at one point, and he said that, like, if somebody voted for a specific person, they shouldn't be allowed to have children. I was like, and this is how the Nazis got power. Like,
yes.
It's, like, that can never become okay to say.
No.
Ever.
No.
On that lovely note, we can continue.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at in the book. This is the part of the podcast where we talk about the things that we've learned. Did you...
All right.
What? I know that you've already read this book, so maybe you didn't quite learn anything, but...
I actually did, because it's been months since I read it. Some of it I can't say till you get further in the book.
Do you want me to go first
yes,
about what I learned?
Yeah.
Okay, so I learned that I have 2 years left until I hit the weird magic switch of becoming a birder.
Welcome. It's a wild time.
I'm real excited. Let me tell you, I've got my binoculars ready.
Sounds good. I need to buy some. I don't have any. Right now I'm relying on the Google Pixel's zoom function.
I'm already, like, thinking about what apps I need to download to, like, understand bird calls. I'm gonna learn all of them.
All right.
I'm ready for this switch because, man, do I love Wingspan, and I'm just there for the vibes.
It's a great game. Yeah. Yeah. I learned that you have a murder hole.
That is true.
That Ian may or may not be in.
He's not in the murder hole, I promise.
I don't know, right now he's Schrodinger's Ian. Like, I don't know.
No,
you say you talked to him. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I have no... And I can't prove that he's not here because he does not have signal. So if I try to call him, it will immediately go to voicemail and you're going to be like, he's dead.
No, I do know that he's alive. I know that this was a planned trip.
Yes. Well, yes, because that's how you... I didn't just call you up today and be like, hey, Bree, something came up. And no, I was like, hey, Ian's going to be going out of town for a bit and we don't want to get behind. Can you please come with us? And I've got the message receipts.
Yes,
so
I do believe he's out of town. Just had to tease you about the murder hole.
Yes, it is true. Yeah.
Also, like, it's just so... You have a very lovely reading voice.
Oh my god, thank you.
You're welcome. And so it's lovely to hear... Because I read this book, I didn't listen to it. So it's lovely to hear this use of language vocalized. Because it is delicious language. Like, it feels good to hear and read and, like, all that. So, yeah.
Thank you.
That's what I learned.
I also, like I said, I have the audiobook of this, and I can't just listen to this particular audiobook because while the language, like you said, is delicious, it is sometimes very... I'm like, what is happening? It's kind of dense. It's hard to understand what's going on sometimes. Or maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm very dense.
I have a hard time, especially when you're also flipping periods of time and locations within those periods of time. I have a very hard time with audiobooks for that.
So I've been listening to the audiobook, which, by the way, is phenomenal. Like, it is very well produced. I love the narrator for that. She's phenomenal. So I've been listening to the audiobook while I've also been reading along as much as I can. And I'm trying not to imitate how she did it because I want to do my own spin on some of it. And also because I'm cutting out chunks, it doesn't always flow. I'm like, wait, that wouldn't flow the same way.
And you're burping in the middle of it.
It's true. I'm burping. That's another thing that I learned today. Not today. I learned, though, from this podcast. I burp a lot when I record, and I think it's just because I get so excited, which is also why I stumble over my words so often. I'm just like, and you also learned that I can't read or write.
Right. But somehow you're phenomenal at both. So.
Oh my gosh. But
just if you ever write a book, your editor will be in a job for a long time.
Yeah. This is the sad part. I used to pride myself on being a very good writer, but...
Well, you're still a good writer, you're just not a good speller. Those are two different things.
They are. They are very different things, and spelling is not important.
Nope. That's what we have computers for.
Yes, it's fine. So, I think it's about time to promote socials. So I'm on Instagram with Ian at... what is it? Hold on. A Pot of Sass is what it is. Yes.
Yeah.
On Instagram at A Pot of Sass. And then you can email us at apotofsass@gmail.com. And you can join Bree in the disco court or any of the other tiers that we have.
It's a party.
On Patreon.
Come hang out.
Yes.
Sorry, continue.
Yes, please come hang out with her because right now you are getting all of the wonderful bonus episodes all to yourself, which, congratulations on that.
Let me just say, though, she's not just saying they're wonderful to say they're wonderful. Like, they're actually super entertaining, and it is a type of entertainment that you won't get on the normal podcast, I don't think.
Unless I read another book that I absolutely hate.
Yeah, exactly. So if you want to hear Sarah not praising someone, feel free to come over to Patreon.
It is possible that kind of stuff will happen on the real pod. I hope it doesn't, but I mean, I don't know all of the books that are on my to be read list. But anyways, the Patreon is patreon.com/apotofsassandSarcasm. And again, you can join Disco Court. You can join, I think there's one that's called like Yacht Club Court or something like that. There's Casino Court, which you haven't heard that bonus episode yet. So you're like, what are these courts? What are you talking
about?
about
them.
They're exciting.
I'm trying to guess which one they are.
Oh, you just wait. So not all of them, I think, are explained in the episodes, but you've got one coming out for you tomorrow.
Okay. Nice.
So lucky you. And then the last one where I explain most of the jokes of the courts of like Yacht Club Court, Casino Court is the very last one that will be either next week or the following week. I have to edit it. Nice. But anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. This was kind of a long recording, but I promise I'm really great at editing, so it'll
fantastic
come down. So thank you so much. We hope that you keep listening, and I hope that you stay sassy.
Yeah.
Stay just as sassy as Isabel. I beg of you.
That is the right level of sass. Grab those gloves, grab that straw hat, and march to the other guy's car.
And say, it looks like I'm driving. Thank you. I can see what's happening here. It's me driving your mom's car. Bye.
I just can't look at it.
Oh, this is gonna be so much fun. Okay. I gotta record. I gotta do all that stuff. I gotta like zoom this in because holy shit, I can't see anything. I know now. Like the music goes in my head. I'm like, whenever I go to a bookstore or whatever, and I'm looking to see if I want to read a book, I never look at the first page. I always just like try to find a random page and then just read. And there's something about reading without the context of whatever else is going on that really makes me feel like. See, it's You're something right. Weird about recording. I will get the burps. In the last book we read, which was Here There Are Monsters by Amelinda Berube, we had gotten, I think it was the 3rd episode had come out, and then you texted me and you were like, I can't wait for the next episode to come out to figure out what happens. So I bought the book, and you finished it before I did.
Okay, I listened to it. So I did miss a lot of, like, listening to your episodes. I realized that there was a lot I missed because I was working while I was listening to it.
If I have learned anything in this long life of mine, it is this. In love, we found it. You think that I just put those in the episodes for funs? No, I cannot read. And we're in, I'm assuming, another French town that's a little bit outside of Paris, and we're focusing on Isabel now, the younger sister of Vienne.
You weren't kidding.
It's so weird, and it only happens when I record. I'm like, what is this?
Maybe you just get so excited that you're talking so much and you're swallowing air.
I think that's what it is. It's dumb. All right. She was already behind the wheel with the engine running when Christophe appeared, a sheen of sweat on his She was already behind the wheel with oh my God, calm down, Sarah. I feel like I'm gonna burp, but it's not gonna come out yet. Of course not.
Probably in the middle of the next passage.
Probably. That's what there it is. Again, I don't get it. This is not carbonated.
I really do think you just get so excited. you inhale a lot.
I think that's really what it is. Dust fell from the ceiling. The bookcases clattered slightly, making the sound like a clattering tea. Oh my God, let me say that one again. The bookcases clattered slightly, making a sound like... Oh, I got so excited there. He propped his cheek in one hand and peered up through her... He propped his cheek in her hand. Okay, there we go. He propped his cheek in one hand and peered up at her through... Oh my God.
Do you want me to read it?
I can do it. I believe in myself.
I believe in you.